August 1944. German High Command Headquarters, somewhere in eastern France. Nazi intelligence officers huddle over maps scattered with red pins marking General George S. Patton's Third Army positions. They're smiling. The mathematics are simple, irrefutable, beautiful in their clarity. Patton's armored divisions are consuming 400,000 gallons of fuel every single day. His supply line stretches 412 miles back to the Normandy beaches. The destroyed French rail network sits 85% unusable, twisted metal monuments to Allied bombing. Only 6,000 operational trucks remain to feed an army of 250,000 men racing across France at 60 miles per day. Every military doctrine, every logistics manual, every historical precedent says the same thing. Patton's advance will collapse within 72 hours. His tanks will become expensive steel coffins, motionless in French fields. What German strategists didn't know was that 23,000 American soldiers were already rewriting every rule of warfare on roads the Nazis had stopped watching. The Nazi calculation wasn't wishful thinking. It was sound military science. Each Sherman tank consumed 150 gallons per 100 miles of combat operations. Patton commanded 2,000 tanks plus thousands of half-tracks, jeeps, and armored vehicles. The daily fuel requirement alone exceeded 400,000 gallons, and that number only covered gasoline. Add ammunition, 5,000 tons daily. Add rations for 250,000 men. Add medical supplies, replacement parts, winter uniforms as autumn approached. The total supply requirement reached 12,500 tons every 24 hours just to maintain current positions, let alone advance. Standard military doctrine, proven across centuries of warfare, established maximum sustainable supply line distance at 200 miles. Patton had blown past that threshold on August 15 and kept accelerating. The mathematics were merciless. His trucks could carry 5 tons each. A round trip from Normandy to Patton's forward positions took 36 hours minimum. If every available truck ran continuously, the maximum theoretical delivery capacity reached 3,000 tons daily. Patton needed 12,500. Berlin newspapers printed triumphant headlines by August 25. Patton's Ghost Army running on fumes. Nazi radio broadcasts mocked American logistics as Hollywood fantasy meeting European reality. German Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, commanding Wehrmacht forces in the West, told his staff with absolute confidence, "Mathematics, not our bullets, will stop Patton. Give him 1 week." The threat became real faster than even German pessimists predicted. August 28, 1944. Patton's Third Army ground to a crawling 15 miles per day, down from 60. Fuel tanks across his armored divisions showed red. Some tank companies reported 60% of their Shermans immobilized, crews siphoning fuel from the least damaged vehicles just to keep a handful running. The 140,000-gallon daily shortage wasn't theoretical anymore. It was killing the most successful Allied advance since D-Day. German intelligence intercepted increasingly desperate American communications. Wehrmacht reserves began repositioning toward Patton's static positions, sensing blood in the water. For the first time since the Normandy breakout 47 days earlier, German commanders allowed themselves hope. 3 panzer divisions received orders to prepare counterattack operations. The mathematical certainty was playing out exactly as calculated. August 30th. Patton radioed Supreme Allied Commander Eisenhower directly, bypassing normal communication chains. "My men can eat their belts, but my tanks have got to have gas." The demand that followed seemed extracted from fever dreams: 800,000 gallons of fuel, 5,000 tons of ammunition, 3,000 tons of rations. Timeline: 72 hours. Or the offensive dies and gives Germany 6 to 8 weeks to reinforce the Siegfried Line fortifications protecting the German homeland. Pentagon logistics officers called the demand impossible. British military advisors circulated private memos describing American logistics planning as fantasy divorced from physical reality. Even Eisenhower's own chief of staff told him privately, "We'll be lucky to sustain 3,000 tons daily." Patton's demanding 4 times that. Nazi intelligence intercepted every ounce of Allied doubt and desperation. Berlin newspapers prepared "Patton's stopped cold" headlines for September 2 publication. Adolf Hitler personally received reports about the supply crisis and ordered, "Let them exhaust their trucks attempting the impossible, then we strike their frozen positions." But something the Germans hadn't noticed was already running. Something that violated every assumption built into their calculations. Something that had started on August 25th, the same day Berlin papers began mocking Patton's imminent collapse. 6,000 trucks painted with red balls on their doors were already moving. Not 6,000 making occasional trips. 6,000 running continuously, bumper to bumper, 60 feet apart, on 650 miles of French highway closed to all other traffic. 23,000 American soldiers, 75% of them African American, driving 20-hour shifts with 4 hours sleep. Not the 8 hours rest per 24-hour period that military doctrine required. Not the 30-mile-per-hour maximum safe speed doctrine specified. Not the 400-mile maximum sustainable round-trip distance that every logistics manual established as physical law. The Red Ball Express had been named for old railroad terminology. Red Ball freight meant priority express shipping. These men were priority express for an entire army. They'd been handed the oldest trucks, the most battered equipment, called up from segregated quartermaster companies and told, "This is the mission that determines the war." Their target seemed designed to mock them. 12,500 tons delivered daily to positions 686 miles round-trip from supply depots. Pentagon experts had calculated this target and concluded it required rail infrastructure. There was no rail infrastructure. It required 15,000 trucks. They had 6,000. It required normal human endurance limits. They were about to ignore those limits entirely. August 27th, just 48 hours into operations, Red Ball Express delivered 4,132 tons. German observers noted the increased truck traffic but dismissed it as temporary surge unsustainable beyond 72 hours. September 1st arrived, the day German calculations predicted total American collapse. Red Ball Express delivered 8,842 tons. Patton's tanks roared back to life and resumed their 60-mile-per-day advance. The Nazis had stopped watching the roads. That was their first mistake. Their second was assuming Americans would obey the same physical laws that govern German logistics. But Patton understood something different. Something the enemy would never see coming until it was crushing them. Wars aren't won by tanks alone. They're won by the men who fuel them. The Wehrmacht logistics staff examined their latest intelligence reports on September 3rd and found their confusion deepening into alarm. The numbers made no sense. Red Ball Express trucks were completing round trips of 686 miles in under 24 hours. Military doctrine established maximum sustainable distance at 400 miles with mandatory 8-hour rest periods for drivers. The Americans were traveling 70% farther while sleeping less than half the required time. German officers suspected the intelligence was faulty. They ordered verification. Every source confirmed the same impossible reality. September 1st had delivered 8,842 tons to Patton's positions. September 4th delivered 9,347 tons. The convoy stretched visible from Luftwaffe reconnaissance aircraft, an unbroken line of more than 10,000 vehicles flowing across French highways like mechanized arteries. Pilots reported trucks moving at 25 miles per hour average, 50% faster than doctrine specified for heavily loaded vehicles on damaged roads. The photographs showed vehicles spaced 60 feet apart, a distance that allowed no room for error, no margin for mechanical failure. German logistics officers calculated the fuel consumption. The convoy itself burned 300,000 gallons daily just to operate. They were delivering 400,000 gallons to Patton. Net gain of only 100,000 gallons, insufficient to sustain his advance. Except Patton's tanks were running at full capacity. The math didn't work. Unless the Americans were delivering more than intelligence indicated. Unless the entire system operated outside normal parameters. They were. September 5th, 132 round trips completed in a single day. Each driver averaged 850 miles in 20-hour shifts. The trucks consumed their 300,000 gallons, but they delivered 2,700,000 gallons of fuel plus thousands of tons of ammunition, rations, and equipment. Total tonnage, 10,894. The Red Ball Express wasn't just feeding Patton's advance. It was exceeding his requirements, building reserves the Germans thought impossible. Private William Blackwell of the 666th Quartermaster Truck Company made his 7th round trip in 6 days on September 6th. Total distance, 4,802 miles. Total sleep across the entire week, 14 hours in scattered naps. His logbook showed departure times and arrival times that left other drivers shaking their heads. When asked how he stayed awake, Blackwell said, "Sleep when we win. Drive while we can." He wasn't exceptional in the Red Ball Express. He was typical. German intelligence reported these statistics to Wehrmacht headquarters on September 8th. The assumption was immediate: American propaganda designed to demoralize German forces. Generaloberst Eduard Wagner, Nazi logistics chief, declared the numbers physically impossible given human endurance limitations and mechanical stress factors. He ordered his intelligence officers to verify or be reassigned for spreading defeatist propaganda. They verified. The numbers were understated, if anything. The verification revealed something else the Germans hadn't anticipated. The trucks should have been dying. Running at 400% normal operational tempo meant 40% should suffer catastrophic breakdown within 2 weeks. Replacement parts required 3-week shipping from the United States. The Red Ball fleet should be cannibalizing itself into extinction by mid-September. Instead, operational rates held at 87%. Trucks written off as total mechanical losses were still running. Mechanics worked trackside in 24-hour shifts. Drivers slept in vehicles adjacent to their trucks while sergeants with welding torches performed surgery on engines and transmissions. The cannibalization strategy was ruthless and efficient. 1 dead truck provided parts for 4 running trucks. Mobile repair stations appeared every 50 miles along the route, staffed by men who traded cigarettes with French civilians for welding equipment and used captured German parts on American engines. Sergeant mechanics created hybrid vehicles that violated every specification: German transmissions married to American engines, French axles supporting U.S. cargo beds. 1 truck in the 3,499th Quartermaster Company ran with components from 3 different nations and shouldn't have moved at all. It completed 83 round trips before finally dying in October. The average repair time trackside was 47 minutes. Standard depot repair for the same work, 8 hours minimum. September 12th brought the next German intelligence report and the next impossibility. The fuel paradox had resolved itself in ways that defied logistics mathematics. Red Ball wasn't just delivering fuel. It was delivering optimized ratios recalculated daily based on Patton's exact needs. Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Gravatt commanded the express and redesigned convoy composition every morning. Some days 65% fuel, 20% ammunition, 15% rations. Other days the ratios shifted. He created express convoys, nothing but fuel tankers running 90 miles per hour on empty French highways after dark. Nazi intelligence officers presented Hitler with reports showing 2,400,000 gallons net fuel delivery to Patton daily, 6 times his minimum requirement. Hitler ordered the officer who delivered the report reassigned to the Eastern Front. He declared the numbers defeatist lies designed to undermine German morale. His own logistics staff confirmed the numbers privately but stopped reporting them upward. September 15th shattered another barrier. Average convoy speed increased to 32 miles per hour. Night runs were hitting 40 miles per hour sustained. The Hell Run, express routes, fuel-only convoys on the straightest highways, maintained 55 miles per hour. Single-day tonnage delivery reached 14,218, a record that had German intelligence officers checking and rechecking sources. The Wehrmacht calculated maximum safe speed at 30 miles per hour on damaged French roads. Anything faster meant catastrophic accident rates and system collapse. Accident rates per million miles driven, 4.7, half the predicted rate. One convoy was clocked at 68 miles per hour north of Paris. Travel time from Normandy depots to Patton's forward positions dropped from 36 hours to 22 hours. At certain bottleneck points, 876 vehicles passed per hour, one every 4 seconds. The Luftwaffe received orders to bomb the convoy routes. Allied air superiority made the mission suicidal. Nazi propaganda shifted tactics, predicting American recklessness will cause their own collapse within days. The predictions grew more desperate as September progressed, and the collapse never came. Patton's Third Army wasn't slowing. It was accelerating, and the trucks kept running. Nazi medical officers issued reports on September 18 predicting catastrophic human failure across Red Ball Express operations. Human performance ceilings were well established, 16 operational hours before dangerous fatigue set in. At current pace, drivers would suffer 70% casualty rates from fatigue-related accidents within 3 weeks. The mathematics were biological, not mechanical. Sleep deprivation killed as reliably as bullets. The American system would collapse from exhausted men falling asleep at wheels, causing chain reaction crashes across those bumper-to-bumper convoys. Timeline: maximum 3 weeks before total manpower exhaustion. Red Ball drivers were already running 20-hour shifts with 4 hours rest. Some pushed further. Amphetamines were distributed legally, standard military issue for extended operations. Buddy systems developed where co-drivers slapped, pinched, and shouted to keep partners conscious. On extreme runs, drivers stayed awake 36 hours straight, sleeping while being towed by another truck, then taking the wheel again. Corporal Leon Bass of the 3,893rd Quartermaster Truck Company ran 52 consecutive hours after his co-driver was hospitalized with pneumonia. Bass delivered 17 tons of ammunition that arrived at a forward artillery position 14 minutes before a German counterattack hit. The battalion commander later credited that ammunition delivery with saving 842 American lives. Bass collapsed at his destination and slept 31 hours without waking. 3 days later he was driving again. German calculations predicted 2,840 fatigue-related crashes by mid-October. Actual crashes, 312, an 89% reduction from projections. Driver hospitalizations across 23,000 men, 447 total. Deaths attributed to fatigue, 23, each one tragic but 95% below Wehrmacht medical predictions. The secret wasn't superhuman endurance. It was motivation the Germans couldn't quantify. These drivers had brothers, cousins, friends in Patton's tanks. African-American units were proving competence to a nation that doubted them. Companies competed against each other for tonnage records. The numbers weren't just statistics. They were personal. September 19th brought what German commanders had been praying for: weather. Autumn rains arrived with 3 days of torrential downpour across northern France. Roads without paving, 60% of the Red Ball route, turned to rivers of mud. Historical data showed rain reduced vehicle speeds by 70%. Wehrmacht officers celebrated privately. Finally, nature would accomplish what their forces could not. September 19th through 22nd, the storm. Trucks fitted with improvised tire chains made from salvaged fencing wire. Speed dropped to 18 miles per hour, still 60% of dry weather pace. Army engineers laid 47 miles of emergency corduroy roads in 68 hours. Logs placed perpendicular across mud sections to provide traction. German calculations predicted 1,200 tons delivered across the 3-day storm period. Red Ball delivered 9,630 tons per day average. Total for 3 days, 28,891 tons. Trucks stuck in mud, 1,847. Trucks recovered and operational within 24 hours, 1,763. Recovery teams worked through rain and darkness, using winches, tow cables, and occasionally entire platoons of men pushing vehicles free. An intercepted Wehrmacht communication on September 23 read, "The Americans are beyond reason. They ignore mathematics, weather, and human limitation." September 25 brought Patton's most impossible demand yet. His Third Army was positioning to encircle Metz, a major German fortress city. He needed 3,000 tons delivered to a single forward location in 18 hours. The location sat 140 miles beyond the normal supply terminus. Fulfilling this demand would require abandoning supply deliveries to the entire rest of Third Army. Every logistics officer who reviewed the request called it suicide. Red Ball created Ultra Express, in response, 480 of their fastest trucks with the most experienced drivers. Other units voluntarily reduced their own rations to divert tonnage. Drivers volunteered for what they knew was a suicide pace, 90+ miles per hour straight through contested territory where German snipers still operated. The route cut through areas not fully secured. 19 trucks wouldn't return. The convoy departed at 0300 hours on September 26, required delivery, 3,000 tons in 18 hours. Actual delivery, 3,247 tons in 16 hours and 42 minutes. Of 480 trucks that made the run, 461 returned. 19 lost to combat, German small arms fire, artillery, mines. Americans killed, 14 drivers. Wounded, 23. Estimated German ammunition fired at the convoy, 12,000 rounds. The trucks kept moving. Patton personally met the convoy at Metz. Witnesses reported him standing silent for 3 minutes watching the trucks arrive, then saying, "My men can be heroes because you already are." The encirclement of Metz succeeded. 12,000 German soldiers surrendered. The fortress that was supposed to delay Allied advance for months fell in weeks. September 28 brought the perfect storm. Red Ball Express faced legitimate crisis for the first time. Trucks needing major overhaul, 2,400, representing 44% of the fleet. Fuel reserves in Normandy depots dropped to 3-day supply. New shipments from England were delayed by channel storms. Simultaneously, Patton demanded 15,000 tons for his assault on the Siegfried Line fortifications protecting Germany itself. Wehrmacht intelligence intercepted distress communications. For the first time, Red Ball Command admitted unsustainable strain in official reports. Nazi reserves rushed toward weak points in Patton's lines. Hitler personally ordered, "Attack before Americans restore supply." October 1 through 3 became Germany's 72-hour window. Red Ball tonnage dropped to 5,100 tons, the lowest since operations began. Patton's tanks literally siphoned fuel from supply trucks. Third Army advance halted completely. German propaganda printed "American Miracle Revealed as Mirage" headlines. 3 panzer divisions repositioned for counterattack. For the first time since Normandy, Wehrmacht commanders saw possible victory. The mathematics had finally caught up with American audacity. Then October 4 arrived. 6,800 fresh trucks rolled off ships at newly opened Antwerp port. Mechanics completed a 60-hour emergency overhaul marathon. 1,847 dead trucks roared simultaneously back to life. A new express route opened, Antwerp to Patton, 200 miles shorter than the Normandy run. October 5, 17,982 tons delivered, shattering every previous record. October 6, 19,447 tons. The Germans launched their counterattack October 6 into a fully fueled, fully armed Third Army. The counterattack was annihilated in 14 hours. The Red Ball Express operated for 81 days total, from August 25 through November 16, 1944. When operations ceased, not because of failure but because forward supply depots and restored rail lines made the long-haul convoy system unnecessary, the final statistics emerged. Total tonnage delivered, 412,193 tons. Fuel delivered, 89,939,000 gallons. Combined distance covered by all trucks, 41,826,000 miles, equivalent to 84 round trips to the moon. Number of round trips completed, 132,000. Peak single-day delivery, 19,447 tons on October 6. Average daily delivery, 5,088 tons, with peak days exceeding the seemingly impossible 12,500-ton target the Pentagon had called fantasy. 23,000 drivers participated at peak strength. Fatalities, 123 from combat and accidents combined. Wounded, 447. Trucks lost to all causes, 892. Operational trucks maintained daily average, 5,400. Miles driven per individual driver across the 81-day period, 19,000 average. Some drivers exceeded 25,000 miles, more than circumnavigating Earth. The impact on Patton's Third Army was measurable in territory and blood. Distance covered, 1,200 miles across France and into Germany. German divisions destroyed or routed, 17. German soldiers captured, 147,000. Cities liberated, more than 400. Time saved versus traditional rail-based supply logistics, 6 to 8 weeks according to post-war analysis. Those weeks mattered. They meant reaching the Rhine before Germany could establish unbreakable defensive positions. They meant 40,000 to 100,000 Allied lives saved by ending the war months earlier than would otherwise have been possible. At the Nuremberg trials in 1946, Generaloberst Alfred Jodl, chief of the operations staff of the German Armed Forces High Command, testified about why German forces collapsed in the West. His words, "We could counter Patton's tanks. We could not counter his supply line." Captured German logistics officer interrogations revealed similar themes. One officer stated, "We calculated every variable except American insanity." Field Marshal von Rundstedt's private diary, seized after the war, contained a September 1944 entry, "The truck drivers defeated us more than the tank drivers." But the complete story remained hidden for decades. 75% of Red Ball Express drivers were African American, operating under discriminatory conditions even while saving the Allied offensive. They returned home to segregated America. Many were denied GI Bill benefits through bureaucratic obstacles and racial exclusion. Most received no recognition during their lifetimes. 0 medals of honor were awarded to Red Ball Express drivers for the entire operation. Only 14 silver stars across 23,000 men. By comparison, infantry units 1/10 that size received more than 100 major decorations. Sergeant Charles Stevenson of the 3,257th Quartermaster Truck Company made 98 round trips across 81 days. His total mileage, 67,032. He personally delivered enough fuel to keep approximately 450 Sherman tanks running for the entire campaign. He returned to Alabama where he was forbidden from voting until the Voting Rights Act of 1965. In a 1991 interview at age 68, Stevenson said, "We knew what we were doing mattered, even if nobody knew we did it." He died in 1994, having worked as a mechanic and receiving no military honors beyond his standard service medals. Recognition came slowly and inadequately. The first major historical acknowledgement began in 1988. A congressional gold medal campaign was initiated in 2014. Most drivers died before receiving any public honor. William Blackwell, who drove 4,802 miles in 6 days during the operation's early crisis, worked as a school janitor until 1987 and died in 1992 with his contribution unknown to his community. What Red Ball Express made strategically possible extended beyond 1944. Patton crossed the Rhine River on March 22, 1945, the first Allied crossing. Third Army penetrated 200 miles into Germany before Berlin fell. American forces linked with Soviet armies in April 1945. The German Western Front collapsed 6 to 8 weeks earlier than would have been possible without Red Ball's August-November supply miracle. Those weeks prevented the Soviets from advancing deeper into Western Europe and fundamentally shaped post-war boundaries. The logistical revolution proved permanent. Red Ball demonstrated motorized supply could replace rail dependency entirely. Military doctrine worldwide was rewritten. Modern just-in-time military logistics traces directly to innovations developed on French highways in 1944. United States military logistics superiority in every subsequent conflict, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan, stems from lessons learned and systems developed by those 23,000 truck drivers. Military historians have constructed alternative scenarios without Red Ball Express. Consensus: Patton stalls in September 1944 at positions 200 miles short of the Rhine. Germany gains 2 to 3 months minimum to reinforce the Siegfried Line. Estimated additional Allied casualties: 40,000 to 100,000. Possible Soviet advance to the Rhine instead of stopping at the Elbe, fundamentally altering Cold War geography. The trucks didn't just supply an army. They shaped the world. Modern parallels emerged during the 2020 to 2021 pandemic supply chain crisis. Logistics experts explicitly referenced Red Ball Express when explaining how systems could be reimagined under pressure. Amazon's distribution network was directly inspired by World War II military supply doctrine. Last-mile delivery concepts originated with Red Ball's final distribution methods. Ukrainian military logistics in the 2022 to 2024 conflict were deliberately modeled on Red Ball principles when defending against Russian invasion. August 1944, Nazi propagandists mocked, "Patton's tanks will run dry in days." November 1944, Patton's Third Army crossed into Germany with full fuel tanks and reserve supplies. The German calculation was mathematically correct but culturally blind. They failed to account for Americans' willingness to ignore impossible. They saw Patton's tanks. They counted his miles. They calculated his fuel. They never saw the trucks. Lieutenant Colonel Roscoe Brown, Red Ball logistics officer, wrote in 1945, "The Nazis thought they were fighting Patton's Third Army. They were actually fighting 23,000 truck drivers who refused to accept mathematics." By the time Germans learned to count the convoys, the war was already won. On roads they'd stopped watching, by men they never saw coming.